Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Manik Suri on the line, and he's founder and CEO of Therma. Manik, welcome to the show.
Adam, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, Manik. So we have a big topic today. So how entrepreneurs could shape the climate change battle. So big topic to cover today. And excited to get your views on this. And just to get this started, we'll start this show the way we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So Manik, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Manik, what mission matters to you?
Love the question, and something I spend a lot of time thinking about as an entrepreneur. I'm focused at Therma on building solutions around the cooling crisis. When we think about the climate change battle, there are a lot of problems that make up that kind of massive, looming societal challenge of global warming being untenable to live in. Cooling is one of them. Cooling is a sector, when you think about refrigeration and air conditioning, that most of us take for granted. And we don't necessarily spend a lot of time thinking about it because it's been around for as long as most of us can remember. But it turns out that cooling is fairly new, fairly resource expensive and intensive, and growing massively. And so I'm really focused on ways to create clean cooling. Cooling today is almost 10% of all emissions. And it's growing at close to 20% year over year because of the developing world. Now, those numbers, you don't have to be a scientist or a mathematician to realize that that's not sustainable. If we're going to massively increase cooling, we have to make it more efficient and cleaner. And that's our mission at Therma, and that's what I'm thinking about every day these days.
So I do want to go further on this topic and learn more about Thermo. But first, tell us, how did you get started as an entrepreneur? What was the inspiration for starting this company?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's always a kind of a founding story, but sometimes the path is, a series of twists and turns. And so looking back, I could say the journey all makes sense. At the time, it was a series of twists and turns. I started out working in technology, coming out of work in finance and government. So I, early on in my career, worked in finance at a big investment firm called D.E. Shaw, based out of New York. Went to work in the Obama administration as a junior guy on the economic policy team in the White House. And I met a woman there, Beth Novick. She was the deputy CTO of the White House, and she was a former lawyer, as she likes to joke, a recovering attorney like I am. And she had started working at the intersection of technology and government and thought there were opportunities to build tech to improve problems around the public sector. Beth Novick. And when Beth was giving a talk about a book she had written called The WikiGov, I listened to the talk, went to meet her, and realized, wow, this is a huge opportunity for those of us who want to build solutions to some of the big problems we face. And one of them was making government work and work better. That's how I got into tech. Fast forwarding a few years later, we had started a center together at NYU and MIT where Beth teaches. And I left to start a company. And this company was the precursor to Therma, focused on the food supply chain, trying to make compliance and regulation more efficient, more effective. The product, Co-Inspect, led us into refrigeration. Turns out that a lot of food safety and food quality has to do with temperature. And we started realizing that there was a big problem, not just in compliance and safety, but in climate and sustainability around the temperature and the refrigeration. And so Co-Inspect was our first product, and Therma, which is short for temperature, humidity, energy monitoring application, it was a sensor-based solution that we started working on a few years in. It turned out to be a much bigger problem. We hit the tip of the iceberg and realized, oh, wow, this temperature issue affects all kinds of people, and refrigeration is a big source of emissions. And so that's how I ended up moving into sustainability a few years ago in a kind of full-time way. We, in many ways, stumbled into the problem from the early work we were doing around compliance and safety in the food supply chain.
I don't want to assume that everybody maybe understands kind of the opportunity or the challenge with, refrigerant emissions and just like the whole problem that you're aiming to solve. So maybe before we go further into thermo, maybe just tell us a little bit more about just the problem that's out there that you're looking to help make a difference in.
Yeah, absolutely. To put it in as simple terms as possible, you got refrigeration, which is a huge sector of the economy. There are 90 million refrigeration units in the business world and 1.5 billion in the consumer world. Many people have fridges and freezers.
And so when you say that, just to make sure I understand correctly, so when you say like big refrigerator units, whether it's at a store, a convenience store, like that's what we're talking about when we're talking about refrigeration or home or anything like that. Am I right?
Exactly. It could be a McDonald's or a Marriott hotel or a convenience store. And
Got it.
Those are all customers and the types of locations we serve. The refrigeration units have three sources of waste. One is they go down because of power outages, equipment failure, and human errors. When they go down, they cause product to spoil. So that's problem one, product spoilage or food waste. And a lot of that's avoidable with good monitoring and good intervention. But because most of these units are not monitored, they're dumb, so to speak, they don't have real-time visibility, a lot of stuff gets wasted and thrown out. The second issue is energy. Refrigeration uses about 15% of all electricity in the U.S., which is a big number. It's one of the single biggest users of electricity. And when we think about climate and ways to reduce the climate crisis, we have to tackle the energy demand problem. And refrigeration is often run inefficiently. There's a lot of overcooling. Because people don't necessarily monitor real-time conditions, the model has been set and forget. You plug it in, you set a thermostat in the fridge, and you let it run forever. That leaves a lot of money on the table and leaves a lot of room for efficiency on the energy spend. And the third issue with refrigeration is that the chemicals that are used to make refrigeration work, they're called refrigerants. These chemicals are super warming. They are between 1,000 and 10,000 times more warming than CO2 in the atmosphere. And they get emitted when refrigeration goes down. And now we allow that regulation. The Environmental Protection Agency in the U.S. allows up to 35% refrigerant leaks a year for a piece of equipment. And refrigerants are fairly cheap. So there's not a lot of cost to leaking refrigerants at a business level, but there's a huge cost at a society level. And so those are the three things we're trying to work on: reducing food waste, energy waste, and refrigerant waste. In total, those three are big drivers of warming. And because refrigeration is big and growing really rapidly around the world, as developing economies want more refrigeration and cold chain, there's a huge need to make this space more efficient.
So going a step further, so tell us a little bit more about the product and about Therma in general and how it works.
Sure. We are building at Therma a technology solution that combines IoT, so Internet of Things sensors. These are essentially connected sensors that have the ability to turn a dumb asset into a smart asset. So taking a sensor and placing it wirelessly into an environment that historically has never been monitored allows people to see what's going on in real time. That's the first part of the Therma solution. IoT sensors that work wirelessly that you can drop in place. That's historically not been possible because the side of refrigeration units has an iron or steel wall that's blocked signal from getting out. It acts like a Faraday cage. So Wi-Fi and Bluetooth-based sensors can't get signal out. We use a new type of technology that's using long-range radio. And so we can get signal out of the inside of a fridge or freezer wirelessly. The second thing we do is analyze that data to provide learnings and pattern recognition. So it turns out that when you're looking at tons and tons of equipment over a lot of time, you realize certain items are being overcooled, or there are patterns in the data, like at night on a Friday, every Friday between 1 and 3 a.m., there might be a spike in the temperature for an hour and a half. It turns out someone is coming to do cleaning or inventory and leaving the door of a walk-in open for an hour, just burning shelf life and burning energy. And the third thing we're working on is controlling refrigeration, acting like a Nest thermostat, if you will, or a smart controller, being able to remote control to turn things up and down. That's important because it turns out that you don't need to run refrigeration the same way every single day, week after week. When it's hot outside versus when it's cold outside, you might be able to run refrigeration differently. Depending on the energy pricing, You may want to run refrigeration more when energy is cheaper rather than when it's more expensive, or when energy is cleaner rather than when it's more expensive. So those kinds of intelligence, that type of intelligence, is not possible without solutions like Therma, without the ability to monitor, optimize, and control. And that's what we're trying to do.
And so it really sounds like you're, really creating some win-win type situations, because obviously it's good for the earth, right? Less waste essentially in running these units. It's definitely good for the proprietors, whether it's a large company or whoever, because the downtime, the food waste, all the things that you said there, like if it's a as you mentioned, like a dumb machine or a dumb asset that's not online, that's not really being monitored, or the capability to monitor it wasn't really there in the past. Then you can't really optimize it. But by bringing these machines online, so to speak, then you're able to optimize and make them more efficient, which then returns, back to that savings and cost back to the proprietors. So it looks like everywhere, like up and down the chain here, like it's a pretty winning solution. Am I off on anything here?
That's what we like to believe, Adam. This is really designed to be a solution that's a no-brainer. It's meant to be a low-cost, easy-to-deploy, ROI-positive tech solution. And so the idea is you can save money and save the planet by aligning incentives. You can avoid product waste, avoid overcooling, and catch asset downtime. And all in the background, you're helping reduce emissions. I think we've been successful over the last 2 years with this approach, in the sense that we've gone from, a couple of proof points and 100 sensors to coming up on 10,000 sensors in the world, and trying to get that from 10,000 to 100,000 over the next turn of growth. And that's still barely scratching the surface. As I mentioned, there are 90 million refrigeration units in the business world. So even 100,000 sensors would be barely scratching the surface in terms of making that layer more intelligent.
Yeah, that's great. It makes total sense. And what kind of response have you gotten? And congratulations, by the way, 10,000. That is to scale from hundreds to 10,000 in any business and anything. That's quite an accomplishment. So congrats on that. Number one. Number two, what kind of response have you gotten so far from the marketplace?
Appreciate the kind words. Definitely building businesses and building organizations has some blood, sweat, and tears in it. I think we've been very excited by the response from many different segments of the market. We sell primarily to folks in the food supply chain, all the way up and down the supply chain, from the top of the chain, growers, brewers, folks that are on the farm, so to speak, all the way up to convenience stores, grocery, and then of course restaurants, hotels, amusement parks, casinos, anyone that has food being served and stored. We had great success with both national brands. We've signed a slew of logos from McDonald's and Taco Bell and Burger King, Pizza Hut and Domino's operators, to Marriott, Wyndham, and Hilton hotel operators, as well as folks in the supply chain, like UNFI, one of the largest food distributors in North America. And so we're seeing a lot of interest from these bigger companies. But what I'm most excited about is we've been able to serve the independent segment as well. Roughly 70% of our customers are small and mid-sized businesses with less than 10 locations, whether it's a corner bodega or a local pizza shop with a couple of locations or a food truck. And so the idea behind Therma was always to make this technology accessible and not just to serve the biggest companies. And I think what's been exciting to see in the last 2 years is we're able to target both national and regional players, but also serve independents.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a great story, Manik, and awesome to meet you and to hear what you're doing, and wishing you much more continued success here. And that being said, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about Therma, what's the best way for them to connect with you and your team?
We'd love to connect. I appreciate that, Adam. We've got an online presence, and I'm always looking to connect with potential partners and team members and anyone who's interested in learning more. Please feel free to email me directly. My email is Manik, MANIK, @hellotherma.com. That's Manik @hellotherma.com. Or you can check us out on social, on hellotherma.com, at LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. We've got a dozen jobs open on the team. We're based in the San Francisco Bay Area, but hiring remote. We're raising another round of venture capital and always looking to meet potential partners. So definitely reach out. Thanks for the time today.
Amazing. Well, thank you again. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. We'll put in all that information that Manik gave in terms of websites, stuff like that in the show notes so that you can just click on the link and head right on over. And if this is your first time with Mission Matters, we're a platform dedicated to really amplifying the voices of entrepreneurs, executives, and experts, having them share why they do what they do, like what gets them fired up to go out there into the marketplace and really to make a difference. If that's the kind of content that you're into, we definitely invite you to subscribe to the show. We have many more mission-based entrepreneurs and executives coming on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Manik, again, really been a pleasure having you on the show, and wishing you much more continued success.
Thanks much, Adam. Happy New Year to everyone. Good luck with 2022. Thanks for having me.